Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Jobin, and you are listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. This podcast is dedicated to helping family caregivers in Ontario. Through expert tips and resources, you'll gain knowledge and validation for the ups and downs that come with caregiving. More importantly, you'll learn that you are not alone. It's so important to take this time for yourself, and we're glad that you're here. Today, we are joined by Katherine George. Katherine is a caregiver and a peer mentor for the Ontario Caregiver One-to-One Peer Support Program. Katherine became a caregiver 10 years ago when her partner began struggling with his mental health. And in 2020, she also became a caregiver to her son, who was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease. He sadly passed away in 2022. And it was during her journey as a caregiver for her son that Katherine became involved with the Ontario Caregiver Organization's peer mentorship program. To this day, she is an active peer mentor for other caregivers. Katherine, thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
We have important conversations on Time to Talk. They're not easy conversations, and we are very grateful that you're here to share your story. I do understand that you have said that you find, sharing your caregiving journey to be therapeutic for you. And I hope that it will also be helpful for our listeners. And that's really what we want to do here on Time to Talk, is create this space where caregivers can feel seen and heard and find a connection with people that might be going through something similar to them, or maybe something different. So I really love that your story also highlights the importance of community, because that's what we're trying to create here. I wanted to start and I know your caregiving journey sort of has more than one facet to it. So let's talk about, when did you become a caregiver? When do you consider that your caregiving journey started?
I think in the last 3 years, I really felt that my caregiving journey started when I had my son. I feel that I probably didn't do the best job being a caregiver for my husband as he continued to struggle and some of his mental mental health symptoms manifested. It's not that I ignored them. I think we both felt like they were under control. And so we just didn't do anything about them. And then when our son became born and he got his diagnosis, things really started to manifest with him. And I think in combination of his amazing employer and me trying to support him best that I could, that we were able to work on his mental health while co-parenting and co-caregiving for our son.
It's a complex web.
Yeah, it is complex.
Situation. It is, but I don't think I've listened to or engaged in too many stories, including my own, when it comes to caregiving, that are really a straightforward thing, because everything is something that we didn't plan for and sort of unfolds as it goes, and is dynamic and is shifting and changing and is profoundly affecting our lives when we're dealing with our loved ones, and particularly a partner or a child. I also understand that, can you tell us a little bit about your son's condition?
Yeah. So my son, his name was Riker. Riker, he was amazing. So infectious with his smile. Riker was born in June of 2020, and I was a high-risk pregnancy, but unrelated to him. My labor and delivery was eventful, to say the least. But he was born at 11:03 p.m. and he was just absolutely beautiful, and he was fine, and he was developing and meeting his milestones until he was about 2 months old. And one day he was very lethargic and not feeding, and I was very concerned, and I had brought him to the ED. The physician had checked him out and had said that nothing seemed apparent. But I just remember saying to the physician, if I come back, it's a problem. Like literally, that was my words. He continued that day to not want to feed, and a 2-month-old, has a very regular feeding schedule, 2 hours max, sleeps a lot. He was really, really, really tired. Later that night, he was breastfeeding, and I couldn't get him to breastfeed that night. And I asked my husband to try it with a bottle. And my husband proceeded to tell me that he thought our son was having seizures. And I really recall saying, that's not funny. He's like, I'm serious. And as soon as he brought him to me, I was in a different room and we were like talking across rooms. I like instantly knew that Riker was having a seizure. And I was like, we have to record this because I don't want to go back and like he's fine again. And we did. And that precipitated, within 24 hours, we were at 3 different hospitals, from a small town community to a bigger centralized hospital. Then we were at Sick Kids. They had said that he was unconscious at this point by the time we were at Sick Kids. And they said that they suspected that he was going to be end of life in a matter of days. And we proceeded to, go through the route of end of life care with him. And then on my nephew's birthday, as he was coming to say goodbye to him, he woke up in my brother-in-law's arms, sorry. And so this is probably about 5 days of him being unconscious. And they still didn't know what was wrong with him, but they suspected this this really rare mitochondrial disorder that was very progressive in nature. This was in the height of COVID. It was August of 2020. And we just decided to have end of life care at a children's hospice. And so we lived in a children's hospice with him, and miraculously and gracefully, Riker didn't pass away. And we decided to, just 3 weeks now, and we decided that if he was going to pass, we were okay if he passed away in our home. And so we brought him back to our house, and he had a lot of care through home and community care in Ontario, with nurses coming in and a lot of pediatrician visits. And he was making some gains, but really small ones. They didn't find out what he had at 3 months. They said it might take a month to get the results, and it came back inclusive. And it took about 8 more months. So when he was 10 months, we got his diagnosis that he had a really rare genetic disease, and that he was the 8th known case in the world, and that they didn't have a lot about his prognosis. They had told us that he was, based on his symptoms and presentations, that he was the second worst in presentation of the children that they had on documented evidence for, and that some of the children had passed away or died, and that we could expect that to happen to him. And so we kind of worked with the timeline of Riker being with us until the age of 4 or 5. And we just did day by day. He was engaged in a lot of health professionals, pediatrician, said home and community care, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech language, dietitian, a whole gamut. But he lived a great life. We were fortunate that we enrolled him in daycare, and our daycare was successful in getting funding to have an enhanced staff person in the room, so that there was an extra person there. Riker needed one-on-one care because he never met his quote major milestones. He functionally was, I would say, motor and language, we always said probably between 3 and 4 months of age. He was unable to feed himself or sit up, but socially, he quite understood things, even that he couldn't verbalize them back. He had little motor movement, like he could give you a high five. He could put his foot up to get kisses. He could roll. It was hard for him, but he could do it. And that's a testament to, our physio and occupational therapists that we worked with. And, you know, I think a lot of people, not tooting my own horn, but I did a lot of therapy at home with them. I felt like, quote, a therapist mom. I breathed that for the 2.5 years that he lived. But that was Riker, and he was great. And he was very resilient. He could be so sick. And we had a lot of scares with him. And by day 3, he just perked up to his normal self. And once you got that smile back, I knew, okay, he's going to be okay. So, yeah.
Thank you for telling me about Riker. He's obviously was surrounded by so much love, of course. And I get a sense of what, just from this, you know, what your day-to-day might have been like, because you have another child as well. You have another child. Your husband has his needs in terms of mental health. You have this child with complex medical needs that you are a parent and a caregiver for, because they are two, like they are two separate things. You know what I mean? Being a parent and then being a parent and caregiver to a child with complex medical needs is an entirely different thing. And then there's you as well and your needs. So it's a lot all at once. I first wanted to ask you, because I mentioned that whole thing where being a parent and then being a caregiver to your husband and also being a caregiver to a child with complex medical needs that you've received a difficult diagnosis for. How did you navigate those two things? How did you find your way looking at that now and currently as well, because you're still doing a lot of this?
Yes. When I was reading the script and I saw the word navigate, I instantly thought of a ship. So I have a tattoo. Can't really see it, but I know I'm on how the interview's going. But it's a sailboat, and the sail is on R, and then there's 2 people on the ship, and that's me and my husband. And there's an anchor, and the anchor has an E for my daughter. My daughter and my son only met briefly. I was pregnant with her through my son's journey, and my son passed away 3 weeks after she was born.
I see. Okay.
But how do I navigate being a parent and a caregiver? So for a parent, there was a sense of loss that the normal parenting when I received my son's diagnosis was probably going to be gone. And it was a very long grieving process. That I wouldn't have a normal parenting procedure. I never really got mad at my son. I never said, don't touch this, you know. I didn't get to see the grandiose milestones, but I celebrated the inch stones that he did. Could have been just raising his hands, cracking a smile. A really big inch stone, I have a picture of it in my house, is that there's that moment when you have a child and your child finds the bar on the stroller and puts their foot on the bar all the time. And I remember the first time Riker did that, and I was walking with him, and I never honestly thought that he would get there. But he found the bar, and then he knew that he loved that. And that's an inch stone.
Yeah.
Not a big thing that a lot of parents it's overlooked in the normal day, but that's an example of an inch stone. We rode the storm, me and my husband. That's how we navigated it. It was very, very tumultuous waters, and the weather was very unpredictable. But I think Riker gave us a purpose, kind of what a sail does, and that's why he's that R, of having us navigate the seas and helping us, go where we need to go. You don't always need the sail. And that's why I like that metaphor. But he helped guide us when we needed it. And it's that same philosophy is you don't always need an anchor, but when you need something to hold you down, my daughter has given me that through my grief. So that's why I would say that's how I navigated being a parent and caregiver. Is I just became that experience and just was present to it, and saying this is what it is. And I just rode that storm in the uncharted waters.
Looking for support and connection as a caregiver? Our online support group is here for you. Join a community of fellow caregivers who understand the ups and downs of your role. Share your concerns and successes in a supportive environment led by trained peer support group facilitators who have firsthand experience as caregivers. Please note that our online support groups are not intended for crisis support or mental health counseling. Visit ontariocaregiver.ca to learn more. And now, back to our episode. That makes a lot of sense to me. And especially as, because these are all things that you don't plan for, but they unfold and they are happening. So being present, like you said, for those little moments, which are so important, and it's valuable perspective, I think, for many of us. Before you even became a caregiver, the caregiving was a big part of your life because it was your graduate studies were focused on the idea of caregiving. So I have sort of a two-part question. Can you tell me a little bit about what your graduate studies focused on specifically? And then maybe, is there because they're studying for something, there's cognitively knowing about something, and then there's living it. You know what I mean? So tell us a little bit about your studies, and then did that prepare you at all? Or is it easier to help other people prepare for the process than others?
So it was so many years ago that I actually did my master's thesis, and it was a cognitive rehabilitation program for breast cancer survivors and their caregivers. So I was working in oncology in the supportive care field, and I worked with a plethora of amazing people, healthcare professionals, dietitians, social workers, physiotherapists, a neuropsychologist. They were just amazing bunch of people to work with and see what they had to do day in and day out to help people navigate their journey through the oncology when they're given a diagnosis, and then also with their loved ones. And so my thesis supervisor, he had done a study for his PhD, and we kind of did a continuance of that. And I was able to watch him facilitate a group with the breast cancer survivors, and also was a social worker that did it with the caregivers. And when I was in the caregiver learning part, I was really blank, tabula rasa, blank slate to really understanding what caregivers have to go to, because you always focus on the patient, as it should be. But I saw husbands, I saw sisters, volunteer for a study, knowing that it was a cry for help in a way that they're like, I see this person that I love so much suffering, but how do I help them, and how do I help myself? And so my thesis worked on strategies to help them with their cognitive fatigue, and some of the memory issues that they were circumventing through their treatment and post-treatment. And so that's how I got introduced to caregiving. And then it kind of just escalated into my professional life in a different fields that I worked in healthcare, caregiving support. I worked in chronic disease self-management, and seeing caregivers again in different diseases, from diabetes to pain, and how they are suffering at times, and how to get some help for themselves in their busy lives of caring for somebody. So
do you feel that in any way that prepared you for the caregiving journey that you've been on? Or
yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I forgot the second question.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely. It gave me tips, like indirectly, that I didn't even know that I was doing as I started my caregiving journey. And being present, being able to breathe, being able to set goals. I helped facilitate groups or caregivers. And so all of these things that I was adding to my toolbox unconsciously, I started to pull out as I did my caregiving journey. And honestly, like, one of those tools in the toolbox was the OCO. And that's why I started it. I was like, let me just call this number, and don't be too prideful, and that's what I did.
Well, we're very glad that you did do that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about peer mentorship, but before we get there, I wanted to talk about, being that you have been through the journey of being a caregiver for a child with complex medical needs. I mean, every scenario is different. It's hard to say, give advice, but do you have anything that you would want to say to someone that has recently found themselves in that situation where they've been told that their child has these complex medical needs of one kind or another?
When you have a child, like until I was a parent, I was very selfish. And I didn't know what love, I knew what love was because I had my husband. It's a different kind of love.
I can relate. I'm sure you weren't selfish, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I have never invested more into somebody than I possibly could imagine, and more than I did with Riker. But an advice, when you have a child with complex needs, your parenting goes to another level, and it's like you don't sleep and you constantly have worries. And I think one or a few things that I would say to somebody is that you need to take care of yourself wholeheartedly. And some ways that I did that, and it was hard to find that time, I'm not saying that it's easy, was that I really tried to be kind to myself, and I practiced self-compassion, and I practiced gratitude. And I was very thankful for the experiences I was being given, whether they were positive or negative, because they were teaching me something. And I also learned to know what I could control. There are things that I can't control, but there are things that I could control. And so that was goal setting. And like I always ask myself, what do I need to accomplish today? What do I need to help Riker? What do I need to do for myself? Sometimes it might have been like, Katherine, you need to shower. That's your goal. And when I did something so simple, I felt so much better. So like I put energy into things that I wanted energy back. It was really hard because it was COVID and we were social distancing, and my son was immunosuppressed. So, we really had to be mindful of where we were going, who was around us. But if I could bring him somewhere, I did. I didn't want him to live in this bubble. And so if we were in Toronto at sick kids appointment, we'd go to, Edward Gardens, or we'd go to the Science Center, the ROM, or the art gallery, just walking around, always seeing family. It might be can't be everybody, but, we try to do that, walk around, the towers of sick kids, and just, this is Toronto life. I took him to a restaurant once, and it was very scary, but I did, to have these experiences with them. And maybe he didn't understand in that, to me, that he was a child, he was small, right? They don't foster those memories, but I have those memories. And so I'm very thankful for all the things that we did, all the video conferencing and WhatsApp calls that I did with my nephews, because he treated him like a little brother. Those are things that I felt that I was very thankful for. And like, when you practice what's in your control, you can handle your challenges. And there were some really, really, really hard times with Riker and what was going on in me and my husband's personal lives in those 2 years. And we're still here. We're still together. We're still, we brought another wonderful, amazing human into this world. And it's because we put that energy into our control. And one other thing I will say is that if you practice common humanity and realize that like we all suffer as humans, and that someone else might be going to this similar experience, and that we're not alone, it helps ground you. Like I knew that like there were times where I felt isolated, but I know there's other family, there's other people, other families, other people that have children with complex needs, that have had to bring them to the hospital 1,000 times. You wake up wondering, is this going to be the last day? You have all of these experiences, and I was like, okay, like this is common. And also that at the end of the day, we're all gonna die, and just unfortunately, some go before others in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, that's all really valuable perspective. And I'm amazed at, just your ability. I mean, I get that at the moment it doesn't feel anything like that, but just to say like, okay, this is what I can control. This is what I can. I mean, that's great for all of us all the time, to be mindful of doing what you can with what you've got, right? And drawing the best out of that. So that's great advice for us.
Thank you.
So let's move on to talking about the peer mentorship program, because again, you talked about the fact that you being cognitive of the fact that there are other people out there that have similar stories and journeys and experiences and emotions to what you're going through. It can be very helpful. So can you talk about why you decided to sign up for the Ontario Caregiver Organization's peer mentorship program?
So I remember it was like spring 2021. I'm still on parental leave. My son is starting to escalate in his appointments because his diagnosis has now been given to us, and it was hard, and every day was hard. And I was struggling. I really, really was. I was struggling with his diagnosis and the unknown, and it was COVID. And I had a great network of people, but they just didn't understand what I was going through. Even if I was being my 100% authentic self, I usually just didn't know what to say. And so I was familiar with the Ontario Caregiver Organization, and I went on the website and saw what they had to offer. And I was like, let me try and call this peer support and see if I could be of any help. And I knew I needed a specific thing, or someone specific. And I knew it might have been lofty to get what I wanted from somebody, but I honestly was very lucky and matched with a young woman that had a child with complex needs, and her partner had a very similar profession to mine. It was very uncanny, and my peer mentor was amazing, and I don't even think they know how amazing they were for me. And we worked around our availabilities, and we often had late night conversations because that's the only time that we could connect after the kids go to bed, and doing the things that we need to do for self-care. But she told me more about what was out there than I even knew about. And I think as healthcare professionals, they're supposed to have all the answers, and they don't. There's too much. Our province is too big. And there's so many different agencies and organizations out there helping. And we have the big ones that, we know about, but there's always these small ones. And how do you navigate what's in your local community if, your healthcare professionals at sick kids, they're not going to necessarily know. But this person gave me ideas about how I could tap into things into the local community and ask for help. One thing that really my family was always like, you're addicted to Facebook Marketplace, but I didn't even know to look. I wouldn't even thought to look on Facebook Marketplace for used equipment for my child. And that there's this wonderful group called Zach's List. And if anybody has a child with needs, they'll know about it, where parents post equipment needs, selling equipment or in search of, and you can go. And sometimes people are amazing. Like they'll have a train. I could be in like Northern Ontario and someone will help me get me this piece of equipment and meet somewhere halfway. And I mean, these are the types of things that happened. And how you give back, or that there's for the needy, if not the greedy, it's Niagara Falls. And I would have never known about these. I remember like some of the healthcare professionals said they had never heard of the things that I was telling them about, but that's because my peer mentor told me. And then just people that you meet along the way because of that, right? Connection. And it's like this first lane was the peer mentor, and then I merged into another part and I met somebody else just because of things down the line. So I was struggling, to answer your question, I was struggling really, really hard. And I just wanted to talk to somebody that maybe had an ounce of understanding of what I was going through. And I truly think this individual saved me from emotionally and mentally, to make me as strong as I am today through our weekly conversations for that period that we conversed.
I think you pointed out so many valuable things, because not only did you get all this really helpful information that was useful in terms of like resources from your peer mentor, just on a totally separate level, it's like we have, for those of us that even if we're sure that our family and friends are going to be there for us when we're going through a difficult time, unless they can relate in a way that perhaps your peer mentor did, it's not really the same thing. You can have the support of your loved ones, you can have the support of your existing network, hopefully, but talking to someone that has shared experiences with you in this kind of time, it's so valuable. It's really quite remarkable, and I'm so happy that you were matched with someone that was able to sort of give you that during that time. And I know you continue to be a peer mentor with the OCO.
I do, yeah.
Which is great. So I'm sure that you're doing that for other people, other caregivers that are reaching out at this time.
Yes, absolutely. So after my relationship was done with my peer mentor, I was working, and it wasn't an opportune time just because my son's needs were leading. But I was pregnant with my daughter, and I knew that I wanted to give back. And so I told myself that I was going to try to be a peer mentor on my maternity leave. And then before, and my son would have, like, I envisioned my son still being alive. And when he passed away in December, and the emotions are starting to escalate, and the grief is starting to really come, I was like, I need to do something. And because I was just crying all the time, which is natural. It's
understandable.
And but I said, I need to talk to somebody. How can I give back? And so I called, and I was very honest and said, I am very new in my grief, but I still think that I can be an effective peer mentor, because someone might lose somebody someday. And um, it's just my reality right now. And I think maybe talking to somebody while they're new in their grief could be helpful for somebody. So that's the way I kind of tried to sell myself, because I think a lot of people would be like, no, you need to take some time to heal. But grief is really hard to talk about. And I think our society and our culture as a whole. And I was able to express that. And so I was matched. And then really quickly, because the person picks you, and I was honest in my profile. And then I forgot to close my profile because I only wanted one peer mentor, and I got another one. And then I closed my profile. So actively talking to two people, but it's been great. Great. Absolutely wonderful. Two wonderful individuals. And I feel that I foster growth in them. And I really look forward to our conversations weekly. And it's being flexible, because I know that they're navigating their caregiving journey with their loved one, and being able to say, is this time going to work for you? No, or, there's times where I'm trying to self-care myself, and I'm like, just have to be honest, and like, today might not be a good day, and they're just wonderful people to talk with, and to hear what they're going through, and how I can help facilitate something to help through their journey.
Caregiver coaching is a professional one-to-one relationship between a coach and a family caregiver. A caregiver coach may help to support you with challenges like feelings of burnout, setting limits, grief and loss, and other common challenges that caregivers face. The Ontario Caregiver Organization coaches have various professional backgrounds in health and social services, such as system navigators and health educators. They also have firsthand experience as a caregiver. They get it. This program is a limited eligibility-based service. To learn more about the Ontario Caregiver Organization's caregiver coaching program, or to see if you're eligible, visit ontariocaregiver.ca. And now, back to our episode. So you mentioned that grief is, of course, a difficult subject to tackle in conversation, even when it's with someone that has shared experiences with you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about caregiving and the idea of bereavement and grief, because many people have said this that I've spoken to, but the perspective is that a caregiver, bereavement and grief sort of comes in more than one stage. And it always does, but while you're actively caregiving, there's grief for what could have been or what was, right? And then there is obviously the idea of bereavement and grief or the experience of bereavement and grief when you actually lose someone that you've been caregiving for. Do you think that caregivers have a unique experience and perspective with this? Do you think it's easier for them to talk about, or is it just sort of the way it is maybe for everyone, just from your experience alone?
From my experience, I would say yes. The caregiving experience with bereavement is different. I had lost before. I've lost a sister, and my grief journey with her, it was a lot different than my grief journey with my son. And I was very close with my sister, and I was an adult when she died as well. I think like with my caregiving with Riker, like I had anticipation that he was going to die. First of all, I already had planned his funeral once, and not many people have gone through that. So I'll preface that first. But then in the back of our minds, and I say me and my husband's, it's not something that I think we shared with a lot of people, but we knew our time was limited with him.
Right.
I had said earlier, I thought he was going to make it until 4 or 5 years of age. And that was what I was working towards, not 2.5. So that anticipation came, and we had open conversations as parents about end of life care. What would that look like again? Because it could be sudden. And there were at times last year where we did wake him up and he was rushed to the hospital and we thought this was it. And then he did his day 3 thing. And I know you can hear a little laugh, but when you've been in the hospital so many times with your child, like sometimes all you can do is just laugh, because he was a miracle. He was very resilient. But that last time I knew. And my husband knew too. It's a very difficult thing for people to hear, because I gave birth, and while I was in recovery, my son was in emerge, and I had to go to the unit to see him when he was wheeled to pediatrics with my newborn. Wow. And my husband flew out via Orange with my son, and I thought like I had said my piece and said goodbye to him, not thinking that I was fortunate to get another 2.5 weeks, but I had to fly with my newborn when she was 5 days old to this other hospital. And then, my husband had asked me to make the final decision, because I think he didn't want to carry that. He knew, but he wanted me to say like I was in agreement with him. And so we came together and made that decision and made sure that Riker wasn't suffering. And we had a lot of beautiful memories and lots of pictures with him in those 3 weeks with him and my daughter. It was I would describe it as solemn, but very joyous time, because it really was just most of the time the 3 of us. And it was hard. to watch your child die as you're bringing life into another. And I don't like when people say that you're so strong, but you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. And I say that because I didn't make that quote. That's a Bob Marley quote. And there's a song that I always sang to Riker, but I had to be strong because I had to be strong for my daughter because she needed her milk,
Yeah.
but yes, it's a unique experience, I would say, in a roundabout way. There's a sense of peace as you no longer see your loved one suffering, but it doesn't end when the last breath is taken. And I think that people who haven't lost a loved one, whether in your caregiving journey or however that relationship is, but I didn't start my grieving process until a month after he was dead, because what I describe to people is that when he took his last breath, which I wasn't there for, my husband was, but I was there quickly after. We were trying to oh, okay, we need to call the funeral home to come pick up his body. We need to figure out how we're going to get back to our house, rental car, plan the funeral, and then close up his little life.
Yeah.
You would think that a 2-year-old didn't have some assets, but he did.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people didn't realize that I had to do that, close his health card, call CRA about his, sin, apply for his death certificate, life insurance, make sure that the headstone comes. And he was buried in winter, so that process took a few months. I remember getting his birth certificate about 4.5 months after he died, and it set me back. And I think it's natural.
Yeah.
But I remember that day, and it was incredibly hard. I think I cried all day, just having that piece of paper come in the mail, which I was expecting. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's that flurry of activity initially after you lose a loved one, especially if you are the person that is tasked with all of those things that you described. And then you also had the flurry of activity that comes with having a newborn at the same, which is, it's a very, I don't want to use the word complex again, but wow, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I can tell that you were, very present for all of that. And again, I don't want to go to the idea of advice, because but is there anything that you could say to another caregiver who may be nearing the loss of their child that they're caregiving for? Is there anything that you would want to say to them?
You tell your child how much you love them every day. You hold them tight and be present for that. Those moments. I think I tried to lock off social media, honestly. Like, I didn't even tell anybody really what was happening. I really was present for his death and those days that were coming.
Yeah.
And then to just, I would say, be present and find peace and function as best as you can for the after days.
Yeah.
Other things that helped, do continue to help, because it hasn't been a year that my son has died yet. Be honest. And it's so cliche, but it is okay to not be okay. And you don't tell people that you're fine if you're not. Rely on your network, your friends and your family. Personally, I don't know how I got through it if I didn't have my husband, my brother, and my twin sister.
Right.
They've been absolutely incredible. And I know my husband is doing his own grieving in his own way. If you can afford to do the things that you want to do, minus traveling with COVID and what I was dealing with over the last 2 years, I didn't really have an opportunity to travel. Although I was very proud when I took Riker over the border once. I was terrified because I live in a border town, but I did it, and he got his passport stamped, and I'm so proud of that. Also, I had to close off his passport, so that was another thing I had to do. But that was helpful. And then therapy. Therapy has been a saving grace. I've done grief counseling. My peer support, I find, is a form of therapy. And then me and my husband do couples therapy. And I think all these things is helpful, functions best. It's self-care, just self-care. Surviving caregiving and grief actually seems impossible. And there are days and nights where the crying and the exhaustion and the pain are like, it's beyond your endurance. And you'll get past it. That's what I would say. Just one step at a time.
I'm so glad you mentioned all these things, because that was my next question, was going to be what were the support systems, and you just listed that you did and continue to lean on, and I think they're all really great advice. That the peer mentorship, therapy, if that's something, and there's multiple different avenues in terms of looking for therapy. And also taking care of how you relate to your partner as well through couples therapy, and then just your network. And no doubt you are helping so many people by sharing your story. And then also as a peer mentor as well with the Ontario Caregiver Organization. I am so thankful that you've joined us today, Katherine. I'm thankful that you have been so generous to share Riker's story with us, and your family story. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk with you today. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me and listening and letting me have an opportunity to share and hopefully connect with another person who's going and can take something that I've said to help them on their journey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can access more details about support services on our website, ontariocaregiver.ca. Until next time, I'm Michelle Jobin, and you have been listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. We hope you have a wonderful day.